Begin the Gemara today on Daf Nun Beis, Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara here continues the discussion we had regarding a person that, what are we talking about over here? The Kesubos benin dichrin, right? The obligation that there is for the Kesubah that includes both the dowry that the father gave for his daughter, and then if she passes away, the husband yarshins it, and then if he passes away, goes to the children, her children specifically, not any other yarshin. And the same thing also, the Kesubah money that he promised to give her, whether it's a mana or Masayim, so she passed away first, and then he passed away, that Kesubah money also goes to her children. So that's the concept of Kesubos benin dichrin. So the Gemara here brings the story about this halacha. Rav Papa Iyasek Leile. Rav Papa was involved in marrying off his son, Be'Abba Surah, to Abba Surah's daughter. This is interesting because Abu Surah was actually Rav Papa's father-in-law. We had this in the Gemara before. Which means that he was marrying off his son to his sister-in-law. Okay? Either way, what happened? Azal Michtav Lei Kesubasa. He went over there to Abu Surah to write up the Kesubah agreement, which would include 2 things. First of all, what is his son going to be giving for the Kesubah for the wife? And also, what is the father of this wife, which is Abu Surah, what dowry, what nadin is he going to give for his daughter? So he arrived there into the city. Shama Yehuda bar Meremer heard that Rav Papa arrived. So Nafak, he went out, Asles Chazile. He came and appeared to him to come and greet him. When they arrived to the house of Abu Surah, so Yehuda bar Meremer was sort of departing. He was going away from Rav Papa. He didn't want to join him to go to his future mechutten, or to his mechutten, which was really his father-in-law. He didn't want to join him there to take care of the matters of the Kesubah. Amalei. So Rav Papa tells Yehuda bar Meremer, Neil Mar Badoy, why don't you enter together with me for this for this agreement here, for the negotiation, for the Kesubah? Chazye, so Rav Papa saw that Yehuda bar Meremer does not want to join. So Rav Papa is thinking to himself, what's the reason? Why would he not want to join him? So Amalei, so he tells Yehuda bar Meremer, my daitich, what are you thinking? And maybe you're thinking the following. Shom, the Amalei Shmuel, Rav Yehuda, we know that in another place, so Rav Shmuel told to Rav Yehuda as follows. Shinana, sharp one. This is how he would refer to Rav Yehuda. Do not be present when they are taking the Yerusha away from the person that deserves the Yerusha to someone else that does not get the Yerusha. In other words, when you change from the way the Yerusha is Menatayra and you're giving the Yerusha to one son and not to another son, don't be part of such a thing. And that's afilim ibra bishul ibra tave. Even if you see that there's a person that wants to take the money of the Yerusha away from a son that's not behaving properly to a son that's a good son. So it seems like he's doing a good thing. So why should you not be part of this? So Shmuel tells him, because you never know, what kind of a children, even this son that seems to you to be the bad son, what kind of children he's going to have. So don't be part of anything like this when you see that what they're doing is they're writing a document to take the Yerusha from one to give it to another. If so Rav Papa again is telling Yehuda bar Meremer, you're probably thinking that over here, v'kol shekein mibra lebrata. Most definitely, if you take money that would be for a Yerusha for a son, and you're giving it to a daughter, for sure you don't want to be part of this. So over here, since we're going to write a Kesubah, and what's happening is the father of the Kala that is going to be writing a big nadin, a lot of the dowry, taking a lot of his possessions that really the son should yarshin, and giving it instead to his daughter. You don't want to be part of this, taking the Yerusha away from the sons. So Rav Papa tells Yehuda bar Meremer, but that's not a good reason. Because Hai Nami Takanta de Rabbanani. This, that a father should give the nadin, the dowry for his daughter, Chachamim instituted that one should do so. And right, as we learned before, it goes so far that even later, after the wife passes away and then the husband passes away, eventually that dowry all goes to the grandchildren, to the children of this daughter. That's the way Chachamim instituted it. And as Gemara quoted before already, the Amir Rabbi Yechanan, Mishum Rab Shimon ben Yochi. Rabbi Yechanan, in the name of Shimon ben Yochi, brought the pasuk that it said before. The Gemara brought a pasuk in Yirmiyah on the previous daf, where it said, K'chu noshim, and it said over there, V'spnei seichem, Tnu la'a noshim, which refers to the fact that you have to give a nadin, a dowry. So why don't you want to join me? Amalei. So Yehuda bar Meremer says to Rav Papa, Hanimili midaite. That's only if the father is giving for his daughter willingly, with his consent. So then that's what Chachamim instituted. La Suye Nami, to force the father of the daughter to give. Is that also part of what Chachamim instituted? Hamalei. So Rav Papa says to Yehuda bar Mereima, what are you talking about? Atum mika minalach. Did I ever say to you, the all the asye, that come with me to my mechutin, come to me, and we're going to force him to give a dowry? We're not forcing him. All the loyta asye come with me, and you don't have to force him. Just come together with me to when we make the negotiations for the ksubah. Amalei, so Yehuda bar Mereima explained, Ma loy didi. If I enter together with you, hainu asiya. This is equivalent to forcing the father-in-law, the future father-in-law here, to give more than he would want. Why? Because if Abba Bar Sura, which is the father of the Kala, will see, oh, look, Rav Papa is here, and not only that, Yehuda bar Mereima is here, he's going to be intimidated by them, and whatever amount he wanted to give before, he might feel coerced to give even more. So just me coming in with you is going to be like forcing him to give more than he wants. Okay, so what happened? But he didn't let go of Papa. Achbe v'ol. He forced him. Rashi says, not verbally, he forced him. He pressured him, and he says, come, just come in together with me. Okay, so what happens? Yehuda bar Mereima comes in. So Ishtik, he was quiet. He sits there quietly because he knew that he doesn't want to be any cause to force the father-in-law to give more than he wants. So he says, I'm going to be there, but I'm not going to comment, so he shouldn't feel pressure to give more than he wants. So Ishtik v'Yosef, he was sitting there, Yehuda bar Mereima is sitting there quietly in the room. So now what happens? It has the opposite effect. Savar, so he thought, the Bach over here adds, Savar Ihu. The Abba Bar Sura, the father of the Kala, thinks to himself, that he must be fuming, he must be angry. He sees how much money I'm giving for the Kala, and he's sitting there quietly, he's not saying a word. He doesn't even want to talk to me because he's angry. You should give more money. That's what he thought happened over here. So eventually what happened is, Kasve Lochol Mai Dahavale. The father of the Kala, Abba Sura, he wrote everything he owns for his daughter because he thought that whatever I'm going to give is not enough. So l'sayif amalei, and then still Yehuda bar Mereima is sitting there quietly. He's not saying a word. So what happens? L'sayif amalei. So now Abu Sura finally tells Yehuda bar Mereima, "Hashtanami loy mishtoimar." Still, you're not going to talk to me after all of this. I gave all the money. Still not going to talk to me. So and he says to him, "Chaye demar." I can swear in the life of the master. Loy shaviki midi lenafshay. I left nothing for myself. So what more can I do? Amalei. So finally, Yehuda bar Mereima speaks up and he says, "Iminoi didi. If you would have taken my advice before, afila hay nami de kasvus leinichali. Even this that you have already given, I'm not happy about this. You shouldn't have. You don't have to give so much. If you give all your money away, remember we learned before in the Gemara how much you're supposed to give for a dowry, a tenth of your nechasim." Amalei. So now Abu Sura realized what happened over here. He misinterpreted the fact that he was sitting quietly there. So he said to them, Hashtanami ahadabi. So how about now can I retract what I already promised I'm going to give? They didn't yet make a kinyan. It wasn't yet a done deal. So maybe I should retract what I promised I would give. Amalei. So Yehuda bar Mereima says, Shavya nafshach hadrana loy kamina. So no, to retract what you already promised you would give, this I'm not telling you to do. Once you already promised it, so you should give what you said you're going to promise to give. Okay, very interesting story here regarding a dowry. Okay, let's go right back into the halacha of Kesubos benin dichrin. Gemara here is going to ask different shilas regarding this Kesubos benin dichrin. Rav Yemes Saba asks Rav Nachman the following question. Machra ksubasa labayla. A wife sells her ksubah to her husband. What does this mean? She's selling her ksubah to her husband. That means that she would get her ksubah, which again, the ksubah includes there's two different things of a ksubah. There's the 100 and the 200 that the husband has to give her, and then there's b'chlal, whatever she brings in as nichsei melug, that she gets if he divorces her, and she sells it all to the husband. Which means in the event that that you pass away or you divorce me, you're not going to be chayiv to give me the ksubah. Okay, so what does it mean she's selling that? So as Rashi explains it, this is what's called Tova Sana. She says to him, pay me something, and whatever this amount that you'll pay me, so this will be mevatel your obligation to pay me the ksubah. Okay, so she sold off her ksubah to her husband. And now the question is, what happens? Does that mean that also the ksubos benin dichrin is absolved now as well? It nullifies the whole ksubos benin dichrin. Yeshla ksubos benin dichrin. Do I say that the ksubos benin dichrin still applies? and that goes to her children. Or maybe the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin does not apply. So let's understand this. The whole idea of Kesubos B'nin Dichrin is only applicable if she passed away first, and then the husband passed away. So then I say that the children of the wife is the one that gets all of the her ksubah, right? So in such a scenario, the actual payment of the ksubah was never applicable because she died first. So true, she sold her ksubah to him, that he will not have to pay the ksubah to her. But over here, if she died first, that payment was never applicable. B'chlal. She died first. And now the question is, so maybe the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, which is whatever the husband yarshins from her. What is the husband yarshin from her? Her nichse milog, the dowry that she brought in from her father, that should still be something that the children should get. After she passed away, nothing different than usual happened over here. After she passed away, the husband got her dowry, he yarshined it, and then when the husband passes away, that should be transferred over to the grandchildren, like in any other case. Or do I say that since she sold the toivas hana of the ksubah, so therefore the children do not get it? No, but the point over here is, though, what did she sell though? She only sold the rights to collect her ksubah. She only sold the rights to collect the ksubah if the husband, that is, passes away first. That's what she was sold. But she didn't sell. Over here, the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, which is the dowry that comes from the father that the husband yarshins, and then when the husband passes away, the children get, that she didn't sell. She did not sell that. Okay, so over here the question is, do I say that because she sold the Kesubah, so she gave up everything, and therefore the children do not get that Kesubah? Or, no, the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, they still get. Okay, that's the Gemara Shaila. So Rav says to him on this question, did I read the whole thing over here? Yesh lo Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, or ein lo Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, or she does not get it. So Rav says about this shaila here, why are you asking the question only in a case when she sold her Kesubos B'nin Dichrin to her husband? Ask the same shaila should apply in the case of Mecheles. What if she forgoes on it? She tells her husband, I'm Meichel my Kesubah. Right? If you're not asking the question in this case, it seems like that to you it's obvious when she's Meichel the Kesubah, the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin still applies. So he says you should ask the same question in a case where she's Meichel the Kesubah, whether the children will still get Kesubos B'nin Dichrin or not. Amalei. So who is this over here? Rav Yemer Sabah answers and says, you're right, for sure the question would be by a case of Mechila. If I have a question regarding a case where the wife sold the rights of her ksubah, that she will not be able to collect her ksubah to her husband. So in such a case, I now have a suffix whether the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin will still apply for the children. Now, the Gemara explains what's the chiddush of this ibaya. The afagav dikele meimar. In such a case, you can come and say zuzi ansua, that the only reason she's selling it to her husband is because she was pressed for cash. She needed to have money immediately, so how's she going to make money immediately? She doesn't have a penny. So what she does is, she tells her husband, for the fact that I'm being meichel for you, I'm selling you the fact that you won't have to pay me the ksubah, and give me something for that. So she sold it because she was pressed for money. The Gemara now here gives a very interesting expression regarding a situation when a person is pressed for money. And therefore she says to herself, we can say that is, that it's like a person that's getting 100 lashes with this strap that has this iron piece on it. So the kitzah, she was under a lot of pressure. So because of all this pressure, I say that when she sold the ksubah, she wasn't really intending to give up the whole condition of the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin, that the children should still yarshin the dowry that the husband gets after she passed away. So over there, we have this shaila, whether the children will still get it. In a case where she forgoes on the ksubah willingly, not because she's under any pressure, she didn't sell it at all. When she was meichel it, for sure there would be a reason to say that once she's meichel the payment of her ksubah, so for sure the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin should also be absolved, should also be nullified. So yeah, it's taka part of the sibay, and even more so, there's a svara to say if she's meichel it, that now the Kesubos B'nin Dichrin the children shouldn't get as well. So now the Gemara will address this, and Rava himself is speaking over here. So Rava brings up a few different scenarios regarding this question. So Amar Rava said, Pshitali, what's obvious to me is as follows. Mecheres ksubasa lachedim. a woman that sells her ksubah to others, not to her husband, she sells her ksubah to others. Again, what does this concept of selling your ksubah mean? The rights to collect your ksubah. So she sells someone, she says, if on a day I get divorced or I get widowed, so then instead of me collecting the ksubah, you'll collect the ksubah. She's selling those rights to collect the ksubah. What do you sell it for? You sell it for toivas hana. What's the idea of toivas hana? You can't sell something you don't have, but the rights to collect it. So the fact that you have the hanad, you're gonna have the rights to collect it. Pay me if this is something now. So she sold the ksubah to someone else. Nevertheless, yeshlo ksubas benin dichrin. That does not change the status of ksubas benin dichrin, because what did she sell? She sold to this other person if she gets divorced or her husband dies. So then this person will be able to collect it. But in the case of Kesubos benin dichrin, that's not what actually happened. When does Kesubos benin dichrin apply? When she died first. So she's not collecting anything. So the buyer that bought the rights to collect it from her is not buying anything. So what's happening in such a case when she died first? What usually happens, whatever she got, what she brought in as a dowry into the marriage, the husband gets, and then when the husband gets it, if the husband passes away, Kesubos benin dichrin should still apply and should go to the children. So in such a case, it's pashut that Kesubos benin dichrin still takes effect. So my time, now the Gemara adds a reason. The Gemara says that somebody Shainim are not even good is this reason because it's so obvious what the Gemara is saying here. But still, the Gemara says my time. Why do we say so? Zuzi ansua, because the fact that she sold her ksubah to someone else, we know she was doing this under duress. She was forced to do this. So Rashi here explains why does the Gemara add this reason here? Because you might think the very fact that she's selling the rights of collecting her ksubah to someone else, that shows that she's careless about everything in the ksubah, including Kesubos benin dichrin. Look, she's selling it off to someone else, so she doesn't care about ksubah altogether. So therefore the Gemara adds the svara, no, she's not doing this because she's careless about ksubah. It's simply because she was under financial duress. That's one halacha which is pashut. Mecheles ksubah labayla, a woman that forgoes on her whole ksubah payment to her husband, so then ein lo Kesubos benin dichrin. In such a case, we say that also this Kesubos benin dichrin, even if she's the one that died first, and the whole payment of ksubah never applied, but nevertheless by being meichel the ksubah, so now also the Kesubos benin dichrin will not apply either. The fact that she was meichel the ksubah, not because she's under financial duress, because she's not gaining anything over here, she doesn't care about it. So therefore, the whole Kesubos benin dichrin does not apply. That's pashut. My time, she was meichel the whole thing. She forgoes on the ksubah, so the Kesubos benin dichrin, which is the dowry that came from the father, is not going to go over to the children either. Now, but the question here is, and this is really the question that that was asked before, Rav Yemer Bas Saba asked before, if she's selling her ksubah to her husband, she's not selling it to somebody else, but she's selling it to her husband. So in other words, she's telling the husband that if you divorce me or I become widowed, I'm not going to collect the ksubah. That's what she's selling to him. Do we compare this to her selling the ksubah to somebody else? And just like when she sells the ksubah to somebody else, what did we say before? That doesn't change the halacha of Kesubos benin dichrin. If she dies first, so there is no collection of the regular ksubah, so then the Kesubos benin dichrin kicks in, that the husband yarshins it, and then if the husband dies, the children get it. So we compare it to what we said before. Or perhaps I could say, she's not just selling it to somebody else. She's selling it to her husband. Selling it to your husband is a different story. That's similar to being meichel to your husband. You're giving it away to your husband. That's sort of showing that you want to completely give up your whole ksubah, and therefore even Kesubos benin dichrin will be included in that, and even that your children will not get. That was the question that Rav asked, like Rav Yemer Sava. So the Baya, after he asked this question, Hoda Pashta, he resolved it himself. A woman that sells the rights of collecting a ksubah to her husband that he won't have to pay it. It's like selling it to somebody else, and therefore the Kesubos benin dichrin still applies. Masiv Ravidi Barovin asks on this. So one of the things, the question of Ravidi Barovin is going to apply to the point that we said over here, that when you sell, there's a svara to say that because there was an einus, she was selling it under duress, so therefore I say it's not like forgiving, it's not like being meichel. When you meichel, I say you give up the whole Kesubos benin dichrin. But when you sell, because it was financial duress, I say that it's like an einus, and she doesn't mean to give up the whole Kesubos benin dichrin. So the Gemara asks on this from a Mishnah in Yevamis that we learned. The Mishnah there says, this is the Mishnah that speaks about the woman that her husband went overseas, and then Eid Echad comes along to say that the husband dies. She's allowed to get remarried to another person. But what happens now if her first husband shows up? He's here. So now the Mishnah there says, because she should have made a proper interrogation about this matter, Teitze, Mizeh, Mizeh, she has to leave the second husband, she has to leave the first husband. And then the Mishnah there continues and also says that she gets no ksuba from neither of them. And then the Mishnah says further, Meisa, if she passes away before any of these husbands pass away, Ein Yershin Shalzeh, Ve'ein Yershin Shalzeh, Yershin Kesubos. The children, either from the first husband or the second husband, do not inherit her ksuba. So this the Gemara there asks, the question was asked, Ksubasa, Maya Vidita. What is it saying there that the children don't collect the ksuba? It says before there in the Mishnah that there is no ksuba at all. So what does it mean that the children don't collect the ksuba? Rav Papa explained that it's referring to what we're speaking about in our Gemara here. Ksubas benin dichrin. It refers to the ksubas benin dichrin. Besides the fact that she doesn't collect any ksuba if any of these husbands pass away, if she passes away first and the husbands are the ones that are yarshening from her dowry, so now the ksubas benin dichrin, the children of this wife, will not get the ksubas benin dichrin. That's what it meant to say. But now the Gemara asks an interesting question. But why do we say that we nullify the whole ksubas benin dichrin over here? In this circumstance as well, why wouldn't we say Yetzer Ansa? That it's her Yetzer, it's her inclination, it's the fact that her husband left overseas and she wanted to get remarried, and therefore this is sort of something that put a pressure on her. She was pressured and she wanted to get married to somebody, so therefore she got married to a second person. Very interesting comparison the Gemara makes. Just like in a situation where a person has financial duress, so we say that if she's selling off the rights of collecting her ksuba, that's not equivalent, that doesn't add up to giving up the whole ksubas benin dichrin. So too over here, if she got remarried to a second person because as far as she knew, her husband is never coming back home, so she was under this pressure to get remarried. So we should say also, she didn't intend, she's not giving up the whole ksubas benin dichrin. And says the Gemara, you're right, but over there it's a whole different story. Hasam knasu de konsur rabana. The reason why there's no ksubas benin dichrin is this is a fine. Over there, that Mishnah says all these different things. It says over there, Teitze, Mizeh, it's all a knas. Why does she deserve a knas? She had an Eid Echad that said that her husband died. So the Gemara there, if you remember, explained, because the only reason we rely on the Eid Echad is because Isha Daiko Minsuva, she's supposed to make an interrogation about this matter to see if the husband actually died or not. So apparently she didn't make a proper investigation because he showed up alive.
No, you're punishing the kids, not her.
Yeah, interesting. The Gemara itself actually says that. If you remember Yevamis, the Gemara over there says, what's the chiddush that you don't give the ksuba to the children? Because the Gemara says you would have thought she deserves to be punished, but not the children. But nevertheless, once they absolve the whole ksuba, everything, even the ksubas benin dichrin, also is not applied anymore. Sagt the Gemara, Yosef Ravim Bar Chanina Kamed Rav Chisda. Ravim Bar Chanina is sitting in front of Rav Chisda, v'Yosef v'Kama Mishmei de Rav Elazar, and he said in the name of Rav Elazar as follows: Mecheles ksubasa lebaila. A woman that forgoes on the payment of her ksuba to her husband, Eilam Mizainis. So then not only doesn't she get the payment of the ksuba when she becomes a widow, but even the Mizainis, that's usually a condition in the ksuba that she has to be fed, also she doesn't get. Amalei, so Chisda said to him, if not if that you told me this halach in the name of a great person, I would tell you, you're returning bad for a favor. Such an individual, bad things should not be removed from your home. Meaning just because she gave up her ksuba, so now she should also not even be fed at all. But once he said it, so this remains the halacha. Now the Gemara brings another story here of a halacha that was discussed regarding the ksuba. Yosef Rav Nachman, Ve'ula, Va'avimi bar Rav Papa, these three Amirayim was sitting together. Yosef Rav Chia Barami Gabai, Rav Chia Barami was sitting with them as well. Also, Gavre, the Shchiva Arusasai. So this individual, his Arusa passed away. So again, an Arusa means after the first stage of marriage. Okay, so as Arusa passes away, now the question is he obligated to bury her, to pay for a burial? Amrilei, so all these Amiram said to him, Zil Kvar, or go ahead and bury her, or you have Laksubasa, or if not, pay her ksuba. So in other words, it is the obligation, the Tnai and the ksuba that you have to bury her still takes effect. So Rav Chia said that no, that over here, in such a case, it does not apply. Okay, so as Rashi explains, what all these Amirayim understood is that one of the conditions of the ksuba is that the person has to pay for the burial of his wife. What is that in exchange for? In exchange for the fact that he's not having to pay her the ksuba of a mana or masayim, whatever the amount of the ksuba is. instead of over here, because you're not going to be paying that payment because she died first. So therefore, instead, you're going to bury her. That's how they understood this that we learned already before, that burial is instead of the ksuba. What does instead of the ksuba mean? Instead of the fact that in this case she died first, you don't have to pay for the money of the ksuba. So, Amalu Rav Chia said that no, we have, based on what we learned in the Braise, we'll see that's not what it means when it says that the obligation to pay for the burial is instead of the ksuba. Instead of the ksuba means another aspect of the ksuba. So Tanina, we learned in the Braise as follows: Ishtei Arusa, person's wife, only an Arusa, the first stage of marriage. So Loi Einan, if he's a Kayin, so then there's no halacha of Einan, or this is not only, a Kayin, Rashi says, regarding a Kayin. So a Kayin that's an Einan cannot eat kachim, but if his wife was only an Arusa, so he's not an Einan, that he would still be allowed to eat kachim. V'loi mitamela, and also he's not a Kayin that he would be allowed to be mitama to his wife. The pasuk there says only she'eda, a wife, and she's not yet fully his wife, it's only Arusa. And v'chein he lo yonenes, she as well is not a nenes for him. She doesn't have the status of an nenes for her husband. And v'loi mitamalo, she doesn't have to be mitama to him. Okay, so in other words, Rashi over here says if she wants, she could be mitama to him. The whole halacha of kainim not becoming tummy does not apply to b'nais aren, only to b'nei aren. But she does not have to become tummy to him. She doesn't have that mitzvah, that obligation, because he's not yet fully her husband. Mesa, if she passes away before him, Eino Yarsha, he does not yarshan her, which means the dowry that comes from the father's home, the husband does not get after the first stage of marriage. The father only gave this dowry with the intention that he's going to fully marry her, not an arusa. Meisu, now if the husband passes away in the wife's lifetime, so now goivek subasa, she will collect the ksuba from him, even only being an arusa. Now, what do we see from this? Taime the meisu. So the reason why we say that she collects the ksuba from him is that he died first. So therefore, she collects this ksuba of man and masayim. Ha meisahi. But if she died first, so then ein la ksuba. Then the whole concept of ksuba does not apply at all. In other words, not only does he obviously not have to pay her the ksuba, she's dead. But not only that, we can't say that there's any condition over here because of this payment of the ksuba that instead of the payment of the ksuba you would have to bury her. Ein la ksuba. Once she died first, the whole concept of the payment of the ksuba does not apply at all. So therefore, the question that Rav Chia is asking on these Amiroim is, why are you saying to this person that he has to bury his wife instead of the payment of the ksuba that he does not have to pay? If she died first, there is no payment of the ksuba here, b'chlal. And the Gemara explains why not? Why is there no payment of the ksuba when she dies after only being an arusa? Rav Ashi explains, because I can't apply what it says in the actual text of the ksuba. When I pass away or I divorce you, and now you're able to marry someone else, you'll take the ksuba money that I told you that I'm writing it, that I'll give you. Right, so in such a case, when she passed away first, obviously that doesn't apply. She passed away; she's not getting married to anybody else. Right, so therefore, so as Rashi here explains, the obligation of a person to bury his wife, and when we say that it's instead of the ksuba, instead of what part of the ksuba is it? It's instead of the dowry of the ksuba that the husband gets. In the case where his wife was only an arusa, she passed away, the husband doesn't get any of the dowry of the ksuba. So if he doesn't get the dowry of the ksuba, he's not obligated to bury her. So therefore, in such a case, a wife and arusa, the husband doesn't have to pay for her burial. Right, so exactly. So that's his questions. He's asking them, he's arguing with them. Kiyasa Ravin Omer Ishlakish, Ravin came and he said in the name of Ishlakish, this concept, Arusa Shemesa Ein La Ksuba. And Arusa that passes away, there is no payment of Ksuba, and therefore also this that the husband would have to bury her also doesn't apply, like we just said. Amalo Abaye, when Abaye heard that what Ravin said in the name of Ishlakish, he said, Zilu Omri Le, go tell Ravin, Shkila Tivusach. You can take your good favors that you're doing us, that you're coming and explaining us this halacha, shad yachizri, you could throw it on the thorns. Why? Because Kvar Tirgemer Avaishi Elishmaite Bebavel. Avaishi here in Bavel already explained this halacha to us, that this idea of ksuba does not apply for the arusa, and therefore also the burial in return does not apply in this case. Okay. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah regarding this, that the daughters, one of the conditions of the ksuba is that the daughters have to be fed from the estate, from the father that passed away. So the Gemara now will talk about the details of this halacha. Rav Tani, so Rav learned that the text that's written in the Kesubos is Ad ditilakchan leguvin. Until when do the daughters have to be fed? Until they get married to their men. The Levi Tani, but Levi had a slightly different gersa, which makes a huge difference. At titipogran, until these girls become a begeres, the age of 12 and a half. Not guvrin, but bagran, right? One small difference here. The bay is before the gimel, but that's what Levi says. So the Gemara asks in this, how do we explain this machlekes? Le Rav, are you going to tell me that according to Rav, afagav de bagar, that even after she's a begeres, she's mature enough, could take care of herself, she's out of the father's possession altogether, even then she still gets fed from the Kesubos money, from this condition of the Kesubos? Ule Levi, afagav de insif, and according to Levi, even if she gets fully married, still she's going to be fed from her father's house. Why? She's now in her husband's possession. Elo, so the Gemara explains that their machlekes will be only in one case. Bagav alei insif, in a case she becomes a begeres even if she's not married, or insif alei bagar if she's fully married even if she's not a begeres. To kulam alei pligi, nobody's going to argue that you don't have to pay her anymore to feed her from the father's estate. Ki pligi, when is the argument? Ba'arusa v'loi bagar. If it was only the first stage of marriage and not the second stage of marriage, and she's not a begeres. So now she explains, when Rav said that the lashon of the Kesubos is tilakchan leguvrin, the term tilakchan is like what it says in the Torah regarding the first stage of marriage, kicha, kiyikach ishisha, which refers to the first stage of marriage. So therefore, according to Rav, even the first stage of marriage, they already don't have to feed her. But according to Levi, that says begeres is only when she's fully out of the father's possession, and that's either bagrus or full marriage, not edison, not tilakchan, not the first stage of marriage. Right? So that's the machlekes here. So the Gemara now brings V'chein Tani Levi b'masnite. Levi, he had his braises that he set up, and he also had the nusach in the braises as follows: Ad tibagran, until she becomes a begeres, v'yimtes manein de insavan, and the time will come for her to get married. So the Gemara clarifies what this means. Tarti, do you have to have both? That it has to be that she's a begeres and it's time for her to get married? Ella, what this means is, oy tibagran, or she's a begeres, oy yimtis manea lis nasava, or the time for her to get married came. Either one of them, the children don't have to pay her anymore to feed her. Rashi here explains this concept of the time of her to get married is what we already learned before, when in those times they would set 12 months for her to get married. If that time arrives, so even if she didn't actually get married, it's already the husband's responsibility to take care of her, so they don't have to feed her anymore. Ketanoi, we see that this machlekes between Rav and Levi is a machlekes Tanaim. At Masya Bas Nizainis, until when does the daughter have to get fed? At Shete Oris, until the time of Edis, even the first stage of marriage, like Rav. Mishum Rabbi Lazar says At Shete Bager, only after Bagras, when she's fully out of the father's possession, or full marriage. Tana Rav Yosef, so he taught Ad Yehevyon, until Yehevyon, which is the Lashon Havaya, which is all based on the term that the Torah says, V'yotza v'hoisa. V'hoisa is also a term of marriage. But it's not exactly clear what this Lashon Havaya means. First or second stage of marriage. So the Gemara asks, the question was asked, Havaya de Edison or Havaya de Nisun? Does this expression of Havaya mean even the first stage of marriage, like Rav, or only the second stage of marriage, like Levi? Teiko, the Gemara does not absolve this. Rav Chisda asked Rav Yosef about this matter. Did you hear from Rav Yehuda regarding this question whether Arusa Yeshla Mezainis, does Arusa still get Mezainis from the father's properties, or she does not get Mezainis anymore? So Rav Yosef answered, Mishma Lishmieli, I did not hear about this matter, Ela Misvara, but I can tell you, thinking about this logically, Lesla. She should not get any mezainis anymore. Why? Kivin de Irsa, once she's married, first stage of marriage to her husband, lenichale de tezel, the titzel that is. Her husband is not interested in his wife being disgraced by having to go around and collect money, so definitely her husband will take care of her. So she doesn't have to be fed anymore by her brothers from the father's properties. Amalei, so Rav Chisda says to him, if you did not hear from Rav Yehuda what the halacha is, misvare, so then logically I would actually say the opposite, isla. Logically I would say that she still does have to get fed. Why? Since her husband is not yet 100% sure if she's going to be ready to fully marry her. He's that is. Again, the husband is not sure. He's going to be interested in fully marrying her. Maybe by that time he might discover something and he won't be interested in marrying her. So he's not going to throw his money out for nothing. He's not going to be interested in feeding her at this point. So she still has to get fed from her father's properties. Now the Gemara brings the exact same discussion here, but in the opposite. Vikadamri Yada said, Amalei, that Rav Yosef responded, Mishmale Shmili, I didn't hear what Rav Yehuda said about this, but Misvare Isla. It's Rav Yosef that said that logically I would say that she still gets fed from her father's properties. Given the Kimli Begava, since the husband is not 100% sure he's going to marry her, he's not going to throw out money for nothing to feed her at this point. Amalei, so Rav Chisda said the opposite. If you did not hear what the halach is, misvara lesla. I would say logically that she should not get fed from her husband. Again, she should not get fed from her father's properties, and the reason is kivin the irsa lenichala de titzel. Once she's already partially married to this man, he's going to take care of her. He doesn't want her to be disgraced, to have to go around collecting money for herself. Okay, so this.
What does she have to go around?
So that again,
Why does she have to go around?
No, that's exactly what he's saying over here. And that's what he's saying. Even the irsa, since we know that the husband is motivated to give her the money, so now we say to the family, you don't have to give anymore, because we know the husband will take care of her. So that's what it works. We're so sure that the husband will be interested in giving her.
Titzel means that she has to go collecting a lapsoch.
Correct, right.
The family's giving, she doesn't have to go collect.
No, but because the husband is going to give, well, let's say the family decides not to give her, the husband is going to take care of her anyway. So therefore, from this point forward, so we say that the family can are hands off; they don't have to give anymore. Now the Gemara here brings the siman before it brings a bunch of questions here that it asks about this halacha, and the Gemara gives a siman for the different things that we're going to learn here. Siman the Gabri, first a siman for the names of the Amiroim that are going to ask the questions, and that's Shak Zaraf, which is 5 different Amiroim that are going to ask questions. And then the questions are going to be about the following subjects: Miyana, V'yuvame, Shnia, Arusa, V'onsa, as we'll see. So by the name of Rav Sheshes, the question was asked from Rav Sheshes. So that's the shin from the siman of Shak. Mema Enes, a girl that is a Mema Enes. So we learned many times about a Mema Enes. This is a katana, that's a Yisaima, that her brothers or her mother went and married her off. It's not a marriage minatayre, it's only a marriage midrabanan, and therefore she has the right to refuse and walk away from the marriage whenever she wants and go back home. So now the question is regarding this girl, if she's refusing and going back home, Yeshla Mezainis, does she now get fed from her father's properties? Or no? They do not have to feed her. Since she was once married before, even though she's not coming back home and the whole kedushin, the whole marriage is being absolved retroactively, but nevertheless, once she left, she does not get anything anymore.
Back home.
Correct? But that's the question.
So she gets
No, so the Gemara says maybe because once she left, she got married midrabanan, she doesn't get. Amalu Rav Sheshes, so Rav Sheshes says Tenisua. So we learned this in a Braisa. We can see that this is a machlekes here. Braisa says the first opinion here is Almana Beveis Avia. An almana. So again, we're talking over here about a Yisaima that got married and then she's an almana. So Rashi clarifies right away. We're not talking about an almana that was fully married. If she was fully married and then she gets widowed and she goes back to her father's home, she's definitely not getting any mizainis because she was already fully married. But we're talking about an almana only from Edison. And now she's going back to her father's home. Or grusha, same thing, a grusha only from Edison, beveis avia, she's going back to her father's home. V'shemeres yavam, or a situation of this girl that's still waiting for yibum, and beveis avia, she's living by her father's home. At this point, she's not married yet, or she's not married anymore. Yeshla mezainis. So because she went back to her father's home, she gets fed from the family, from the father's properties. Rabbi Yehuda says, Oida beveis avia, if she's still in the father's house, Yeshla mezainis. She gets fed from the father's properties. Eina beveis avia, if she's not in the father's house, Eilam mezainis. She does not have mezainis. Now, as the Gemara will right away point out, it's not clear what's the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Haina Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying the exact same thing as the Tanakama. If she's back in her father's house, she gets mezainis, and if not, she doesn't. Elolav, says the Gemara, don't you think the pshat over here is the difference over here is this case of this girl that was only married with the Rabbanon and now she refused the marriage and returned to her father's house. The Tanakama Salvar Isla. So the Tanakama says in such a case she gets mezainis. Rabbi Yehuda Salvar, Rabbi Yehuda says less law that she does not get mezainis. And as Rashi explains in the words of Rabbi Yehuda, you can see this. What Rabbi Yehuda was saying is Oida beveis avia. The words Oida beveis avia is she's still there, meaning she never left. All these cases we said, Almana, even Mima'anes, she left and she returned. Rabbi Yehuda is saying only if she was there and never left, then she gets mezainis. Otherwise, she doesn't get. Okay, so this is a machlekes Tanaim. By Rish Lakish asked the Shaila, this is the kuf of the simon we had before, the Shak. So Rish Lakish asked the question, Bas Yevama. The daughter of a Yevama, Yeshla Mezainis, does she get fed or not? Okay, so this is the case of a Yevama. She got married to a Yavam, and she had a daughter, and now she passed, the father that is, passed away. Does she get Mezainis or Eilam Mezainis, or does she not get Mezainis? Maybe this condition of Mezainis, of the Ksuba, does not apply in this case. Why should it not apply? So the Gemara explains. Kivin Damamar, we once learned before, and we learned this in the Gemara in Yevamis, Ksubasa al nichse bailo harishain. That the money of the Ksuba, the payment of the Ksuba that goes to this Yevama does not come from the Yavam that's married to her now. It comes from the estate of the brother that she was married to the first time. So therefore, lesla. So therefore, yes, there is the payment of the basic Ksuba that she gets for that, but the Tanai of Mezainis, that she does not get from the estate of the first husband. Or perhaps we should say, Kivin, since we learned over there regarding this halacha of the ksuba of Yevame, the ilesla mirishain. What's if the first husband died and didn't leave over anything? So there is no place to collect the ksuba from the possessions of the first husband. So if the ilesla mirishain, if she doesn't have where to collect from the first husband, to kino l'rabana misheni, chachamu wa misakin, that now the Yavam himself, the current husband, will have to give ksuba from his own properties. So maybe isla. So maybe I say that the same thing also applies to the mezainis. That since she can't collect mezainis from the estate of the previous marriage or the previous brother, so maybe she does get mezainis from the current husband. Now the yavam that passed away. Take. The Gemara does not resolve this ibaya.
So the first husband